The fluorescent lights of courtroom 302 buzzed overhead as Sarah Chen pushed her thick-rimmed glasses up her nose for the 100th time that morning. At 26 years old, she stood out among the usual traffic court crowd, clutching her well-worn laptop like a shield against her chest. Her long black hair was hastily tied in a messy bun, and her wrinkled MIT sweatshirt didn't exactly scream professional. Sarah glanced around nervously at the other defendants, mostly suited professionals who looked like they actually belonged in a courtroom. She had spent the previous night buried in code, losing track of time until the sun peeked through her apartment windows. Now, running on just 2 hours of sleep and 3 cups of coffee, she waited for her case to be called. Judge Richard Harrison sat at his bench, his silver hair perfectly combed and his black robe pressed without a single wrinkle. He had been presiding over traffic court for 15 years, and nothing excited him anymore. It was always the same excuses, the same stories, the same pleading faces. He stifled a yawn as he called out the next case. Case number 247, Sarah Chen for a red light violation, the court clerk announced. Sarah stumbled forward, nearly dropping her laptop in the process. A few snickers echoed through the courtroom as she awkwardly made her way to the defendant's podium. Judge Harrison didn't bother hiding his eye roll as he watched her fumble with her papers. "Miss Chen," Judge Harrison drawled, peering down at her over his reading glasses. "You're contesting a red light violation from March 15th at the intersection of Main and 5th. Do you understand the charges against you?" "Ah, yes, Your Honor," Sarah replied, her voice barely above a whisper. She tried to stand straighter, but her shoulders remained hunched from years of coding at her computer. "Well, speak up, young lady. We don't have all day to deal with your traffic violation," the judge said, his tone dripping with condescension. "I suppose you're going to tell me the light was yellow." A few more chuckles rippled through the courtroom. Sarah's cheeks flushed red, but she gripped her laptop tighter. "Actually, Your Honor, I have evidence that—" "Evidence?" Judge Harrison interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "Let me guess, you took a picture on your phone, or maybe your friend was there and can vouch for you." Sarah shook her head, her fingers trembling slightly as she opened her laptop. "No, Your Honor. I've conducted a detailed analysis of the traffic light timing system at that intersection, and I've discovered a significant malfunction in the—" "Ms. Chen," the judge cut her off again, letting out an exaggerated sigh. "This is a simple traffic violation. I suggest you stick to playing with your computer games and leave the legal matters to professionals who understand them." The courtroom erupted in laughter, and Sarah's face burned even hotter. Officer James Peterson, who had issued the ticket, stood at the prosecutor's table with a smug smile. He had seen hundreds of defendants try to talk their way out of tickets, and this nervous girl with her laptop didn't impress him. "Your Honor," Officer Peterson spoke up, "I have the traffic camera footage from the incident. It clearly shows Ms. Chen's vehicle running the red light at 8:47 a.m. Judge Harrison nodded approvingly. "Well, Ms. Chen, what do you have to say about that?" Sarah took a deep breath, straightening her glasses once more. The trembling in her hands stopped, and something shifted in her expression. The nervous energy that had surrounded her seemed to fade, replaced by a quiet determination. "Your Honor, if you'll allow me to present my evidence, I can demonstrate that the traffic light at that intersection has been malfunctioning for the past 3 months. I've developed a program that analyzes traffic camera footage and timing patterns, and what I've found is quite concerning." Judge Harrison leaned back in his chair, an amused smile playing at his lips. He glanced at the clock on the wall, deciding to humor this seemingly clueless young woman for a few minutes before inevitably finding her guilty. "Very well, Ms. Chen," he said with mock graciousness. "Show us this evidence of yours. But make it quick, there are other cases waiting." Little did Judge Harrison know that the nervous, disheveled girl standing before him was about to turn his entire courtroom upside down. As Sarah began connecting her laptop to the courtroom's projection system, no one could have guessed that this small traffic court was about to witness something extraordinary. The courtroom projector whirred to life as Sarah connected her laptop. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced precision, a stark contrast to her earlier clumsiness. Judge Harrison tapped his fingers impatiently on the bench, already planning how he would word his guilty verdict. "Your Honor." Sarah began, her voice still soft but steadier now. "I'd like to start by showing you the traffic camera footage from my alleged violation." The video played on the large screen, showing Sarah's small blue Honda approaching the intersection. Officer Peterson stood up straighter, confident in his case. The footage clearly showed her car crossing the intersection as the light turned red. "As we can all see," Officer Peterson interjected, "the defendant clearly—" "Please," Sarah interrupted, surprising herself with her boldness. "Watch what happens when I slow down the footage and add the timestamp overlay I developed." The same video played again, but this time with precise digital timestamps in the corner. Numbers flashed by in milliseconds, and Sarah had added a bright yellow box highlighting the traffic signal's timing display. The yellow light in this intersection is supposed to last for 4.5 seconds, according to city traffic regulations, Sarah explained, her voice growing stronger. "But watch the timestamp carefully." Judge Harrison leaned forward to spike himself. The yellow light on screen lasted exactly 2.7 seconds before turning red. "That's almost 2 seconds shorter than the legal requirement," Sarah continued. "But it gets more interesting. I wrote an algorithm to analyze 3 months of traffic camera footage from this intersection." Judge Harrison's amused smile began to fade. "Miss Chen, where exactly did you get access to 3 months of traffic camera footage?" Sarah pushed her glasses up again, but this time the gesture seemed more purposeful than nervous. "All traffic camera footage is public record, Your Honor. I submitted a formal request through the Freedom of Information Act. It took some time, but I received all the data last week." She clicked to the next slide, displaying a complex graph with multiple colored lines. "My program analyzed over 10,000 light cycles at this intersection. The yellow light duration varies randomly between 2.5 and 3.2 seconds. Never once did it reach the required 4.5 seconds." The courtroom had grown unusually quiet. Even the usual shuffling of papers and whispered conversations had stopped. Officer Peterson's confident posture had begun to waver. "Furthermore," Sarah continued, her voice now clear and professional, "I tracked the number of red light citations issued at this intersection compared to others in the city." Another graph appeared on screen, showing a stark difference in numbers. "This single intersection has generated 312% more red light tickets than any other intersection in the city over the past 3 months." Judge Harrison's face had turned an interesting shade of red. "Miss Chen, are you suggesting—" "I'm not suggesting anything, Your Honor," Sarah replied calmly. "I'm simply presenting data, but there's more." She pulled up a new window on her screen, showing lines of complex code. "This is the Traffic Light Control System's error log, which I also obtained through my FOIA request. There are clear indicators of a timing malfunction that began exactly 3 months ago, after the last system update." The judge's earlier condescension had completely evaporated. He stared at the screen, then at Sarah, then back at the screen. Officer Peterson had sunk into his chair, frantically flipping through his own papers. "Your Honor," Sarah said, her voice now containing a hint of confidence, "I'm not just some girl who plays computer games. I'm a software engineer specializing in traffic flow optimization systems. And what I've uncovered here isn't just about my ticket, it's about a systemic malfunction that's been unfairly penalizing hundreds of drivers." The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Several other defendants waiting for their cases began whispering among themselves, pulling out phones to check their own ticket dates. Judge Harrison cleared his throat, tugging at his collar. The same young woman he had mocked minutes ago was now standing straight and tall, her evidence organized and irrefutable, her expertise obvious in every word she spoke. "Miss Chen," he said, his tone completely transformed, "I believe you have more to show us?" Sarah nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Yes, Your Honor. I've only shown you the beginning. There's something even more concerning in the data that I think you need to see." The entire courtroom leaned forward, eager to hear what would come next. Judge Harrison's earlier mockery had backfired spectacularly, and he knew this case was about to become much bigger than a simple traffic violation. Sarah clicked to her next slide, revealing a complex map of the city's traffic grid. Red dots pulsed at various intersections, but the one at Main and Fifth glowed brightest of all. "What you're looking at," Sarah explained, her voice now completely steady, "is a real-time visualization of traffic light malfunctions across the city. The brighter the dot, the more severe the timing irregularity. Judge Harrison leaned forward, his reading glasses perched on the edge of his nose. And how exactly did you create this visualization, Ms. Chen? I wrote an AI program that analyzes patterns in traffic flow, Sarah replied, clicking through to show the underlying data. It cross-references multiple data points: traffic camera footage, citation records, accident reports, and system logs. But here's where it gets concerning. She zoomed in on the main and fifth intersection, pulling up a new window filled with strings of code. Even to the untrained eye, something looked wrong. Random characters appeared where there should have been normal text, and certain sections were highlighted in angry red. This isn't just a malfunction, Sarah continued, her voice growing serious. These are signs of deliberate tampering. Someone has been manually adjusting the yellow light timing to increase the number of violations. The courtroom erupted in shocked whispers. Officer Peterson's face had gone pale, and he was now frantically texting on his phone under the table. Judge Harrison banged his gavel, calling for order. That's a very serious accusation, Ms. Chen, the judge said, all traces of his earlier condescension gone. Do you have evidence to support this claim? Sarah nodded, pulling up another screen. The traffic light control system maintains detailed logs of every modification. Normal system updates come from authorized city servers and have specific digital signatures. But look at these entries. She highlighted several lines of code. These changes were made from an unauthorized IP address, always between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. when traffic is lowest. The modifications are subtle enough to avoid immediate detection but significant enough to catch drivers in a trap they can't escape. From the back of the courtroom, a man in a suit stood up. Your Honor, I'm James Martinez from the District Attorney's Office. We've received multiple complaints about this intersection, but nothing this concrete has ever been presented. Sarah turned to face him. Mr. Martinez, I prepared a complete report documenting every unauthorized access and modification over the past 3 months. I can show you exactly when, how, and from where these changes were made. The district attorney made his way to the front of the courtroom, his face grave. Officer Peterson was now sweating visibly, his eyes darting between the door and his phone. Your Honor, Sarah continued, this isn't just about my ticket anymore. Based on my analysis, over 3,000 drivers have been unfairly cited at this intersection alone. The total in wrongly collected fines exceeds $750,000. Judge Harrison removed his glasses, rubbing his temples. The young woman he had dismissed as a nervous computer nerd had just uncovered what appeared to be a major criminal scheme right in his courtroom. Ms. Chen, he said, his tone now respectful, I owe you an apology for my earlier behavior. But I need to know, why did you go to all this trouble? Most people would have just paid the fine. Sarah's expression softened slightly. Because it wasn't right, Your Honor. I knew something was wrong when I got that ticket. I'm a programmer. Solving puzzles is what I do. And when I started looking into this, I couldn't stop until I found the truth. The district attorney was now standing beside Sarah, examining her data with intense interest. Officer Peterson had quietly slipped out of the courtroom, but 2 security officers followed him out. Your Honor, Mr. Martinez said, I'm requesting an immediate investigation into this matter. Ms. Chen's evidence suggests a coordinated effort to defraud the public. We need to secure all related records immediately. Judge Harrison nodded, then turned back to Sarah. Ms. Chen, would you be willing to assist the DA's office with their investigation? Before Sarah could answer, the courtroom doors burst open. A woman in a sharp business suit strode in, flanked by 2 men carrying badges. That won't be necessary, Your Honor, the woman announced. I'm Special Agent Roberts with the FBI's Cyber Crimes Division. We've been monitoring this situation for weeks. Ms. Chen's evidence just gave us exactly what we needed. The courtroom fell into stunned silence as Sarah realized her simple traffic court appearance had just turned into something much bigger than she could have imagined. Special Agent Roberts strode to the front of the courtroom, her heels clicking purposefully on the polished floor. She placed a thick folder on the prosecutor's now empty table and turned to face Sarah. Ms. Chen, Agent Roberts said, your investigation into this traffic light system has inadvertently uncovered the tip of a much larger iceberg. Sarah's eyes widened behind her glasses. What had started as her personal mission to fight an unfair ticket had apparently stumbled into something far more significant. Your Honor, Agent Roberts addressed Judge Harrison, I need to request an immediate recess. This courtroom needs to be cleared except for essential personnel, Ms. Chen, and the DA's office representatives. Judge Harrison nodded, banging his gavel. Court is in recess. Everyone except those named by Agent Roberts, please exit the courtroom immediately. As the spectators and remaining defendants filed out, many of them snapping photos of Sarah's displays with their phones, the FBI agents secured the doors. The courtroom that had been packed just moments ago now felt eerily empty. Ms. Chen, Agent Roberts began, pulling up a chair to sit directly across from Sarah. What you've discovered here matches a pattern we've been investigating for months. Traffic light systems in major cities across the country have been compromised, generating millions in fraudulent citations. Sarah opened a new window on her laptop. Actually, I found something else that might interest you. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she pulled up a different set of data. The unauthorized access to these traffic systems isn't just about tickets. Look at these patterns. She displayed a timeline showing traffic light modifications across the city. These changes create artificial traffic congestion at specific times, forcing vehicles onto alternate routes. And when I cross-referenced those routes with local business data, they'd all lead past certain businesses or through specific neighborhoods. Agent Roberts finished, leaning forward with intense interest. Businesses that have shown suspicious financial growth over the past year. Exactly, Sarah nodded. It's not just a ticket scam. Someone's manipulating entire traffic patterns to benefit certain businesses while hurting their competitors. I traced the unauthorized access points, and they all lead back to a shell company called TechFlow Solutions. Judge Harrison, who had been listening intently, spoke up. Are you saying this goes beyond the police department? Much beyond, Agent Roberts confirmed. We believe several city officials are involved, along with a network of private businesses. Ms. Chen's evidence provides the concrete link we've been missing. Suddenly, Sarah's laptop screen flickered. Lines of code began scrolling rapidly across her display. Someone's trying to access my system, Sarah exclaimed, her fingers racing across the keyboard. They're attempting to delete my evidence. The FBI agents rushed to her side, but Sarah was already deep in combat with the unseen hacker. Her earlier nervousness had completely vanished, replaced by intense concentration as she fought to protect her data. I got this, she muttered, her hands flying across the keys. They're good, but they didn't expect me to have quantum-resistant encryption on my personal laptop. Judge Harrison and the others watched in amazement as Sarah's screen became a battlefield of competing code. After several tense minutes, she sat back with a satisfied smile. Not only did I block their attack, but I managed to trace their connection, she announced. They're accessing the system from the police department's cybercrime unit. Agent Roberts immediately pulled out her phone. Team 2, move in on the police department location now. Priority target is the cybercrime unit. She turned back to Sarah. Ms. Chen, we're going to need to take your laptop as evidence. Sarah shook her head. Better idea. I'll give you a secured copy of all my data, but I need my laptop to continue monitoring the traffic system. Someone needs to prevent them from deleting evidence from other intersections while your team moves in. Agent Roberts studied Sarah for a moment before nodding. Judge Harrison, given the circumstances, I'd like to request that Ms. Chen be appointed as a temporary technical consultant to the FBI for this investigation. The judge, who had watched the entire scene unfold with increasing astonishment, readily agreed. Granted. And Ms. Chen, consider your traffic violation dismissed. Sarah barely heard him, already focused on her screen again. The nervous girl who had walked into traffic court that morning was gone, replaced by a confident expert who had just become central to a major federal investigation. They're trying to access other intersections now, she announced, her glasses reflecting the scrolling code. But this time, we're ready for them. Within hours, the quiet traffic court had transformed into a makeshift command center. FBI technicians had set up their equipment around Sarah, who remained focused on her laptop screen, monitoring the city's traffic grid for any suspicious activity. They're getting desperate, Sarah announced, pointing to her display. Look at these attempts to access the system. They're not even trying to hide their tracks anymore. Agent Roberts leaned over Sarah's shoulder, watching the attack attempts multiply across the screen. How many locations are they targeting? 17 intersections so far, Sarah replied, her fingers dancing across the keyboard. But I created a honeypot system. They think they're deleting evidence, but they're actually accessing a duplicate network I set up. Every move they make is being recorded. Suddenly, Sarah sat up straighter. Wait a minute. This is strange. She pulled up a new window showing a complex web of connections. The attacks aren't just coming from the police department anymore. I'm seeing access attempts from City Hall, the Department of Transportation, and the mayor's office. Agent Roberts immediately got on her phone. All units, expand the search parameters. I repeat, expand to all previously identified locations. The district attorney, Mr. Martinez, who had been quietly taking notes, spoke up. This could explain why all our previous investigations into traffic violations hit dead ends. The corruption goes all the way to the top. Sarah nodded absently, her attention still fixed on her screen. The pattern makes sense now. Look at these property records I just pulled up. She displayed a map of the city with various properties highlighted in red. Every business that benefited from the manipulated traffic patterns is owned by shell companies, and all those companies trace back to a single holding corporation. TechFlow Solutions, Agent Roberts finished. The same company that got the contract to upgrade the city's traffic system last year. Judge Harrison, who had refused to leave his courtroom despite the chaos, shook his head in disbelief. How did no one catch this before? Because they were smart, Sarah explained, pulling up more data. They made small changes over time, nothing dramatic enough to raise immediate suspicion. A yellow light shortened by 2 seconds here, a green light extended there. Each change was subtle, but the cumulative effect. She gestured to a graph showing the flow of money. They've redirected millions in revenue to their preferred businesses while collecting hundreds of thousands in fraudulent traffic fines. Suddenly, her laptop emitted a sharp beep. The changing tactics. Sarah's hands flew across the keyboard. They're not just trying to delete evidence anymore, they're attempting to override the entire traffic system. The large screen at the front of the courtroom, still connected to Sarah's laptop, showed a map of the city's traffic grid flashing red. If the hackers succeeded, they could throw the entire city into chaos. Can you stop them? Agent Roberts demanded. Sarah didn't respond immediately, too focused on her countermeasures. Lines of code streamed across her screen as she fought to protect the system. The FBI technicians watched in amazement as she single-handedly defended against multiple attack vectors. Almost, Sarah muttered, her glasses reflecting the rapid-fire changes on her screen. Just need to. There. The flashing red lights on the city map suddenly turned green, then blue. Sarah sat back with a satisfied smile. Not only did I block their attack, but I also managed to inject a tracking program into their system. We now have the exact locations of every computer they're using. She turned to Agent Roberts. Your teams might want to move fast. They'll realize what happened any second now. Agent Roberts was already mobilizing her teams. All units, prepare to move in. We have confirmed locations. Stand by for coordinates. As the FBI agents rushed to their positions, Mr. Martinez approached Sarah. Miss Chen, would you be willing to testify about your findings? This case will need a technical expert who can explain all this to a jury. Sarah pushed her glasses up, a hint of her old nervousness returning. Testify? In front of people? Judge Harrison, who had watched her transformation from nervous defendant to confident expert, spoke up. Ms. Chen, you just took on a citywide criminal organization in my courtroom without flinching. I think you can handle testifying. Sarah looked around at the command center she'd helped create, at the FBI agents who now treated her as an equal, at her laptop that had helped uncover a massive criminal conspiracy. She smiled. Yes, I'll testify. Someone needs to explain to the jury exactly how they did this, and how we caught them. The next 48 hours passed in a whirlwind of activity. FBI raids across the city had resulted in 27 arrests, including 3 senior police officials, 2 city council members, and the deputy mayor. News vans lined the streets outside the courthouse, all hoping to catch a glimpse of the young programmer who had cracked the case. Sarah sat in a secure conference room, surrounded by stacks of printouts and multiple computer screens. She had barely slept, working alongside. Ms. Chen, Agent Roberts said, entering the room with fresh coffee, the press is having a field day with this story. They're calling you the traffic light vigilant. Sarah wrinkled her nose at the nickname, barely looking up from her work. I prefer software engineer. Besides, we still haven't found the mastermind behind TechFlow Solutions. All these arrests are just the middle management. She pulled up a complex network diagram on the main screen. Look at these financial transfers. Everyone we've arrested was on TechFlow's payroll, but they were all receiving orders from someone else. Someone who knew exactly how to manipulate both traffic patterns and people. Agent Roberts studied the diagram. What makes you say that? The elegance of the code, Sarah explained, highlighting specific sections. Whoever wrote this understood both traffic flow algorithms and human psychology. They knew that frustrated drivers would always take the path of least resistance, even if it meant changing their regular routes. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mr. Martinez entered, looking exhausted but excited. We just got a breakthrough. One of the arrested council members agreed to talk. He's naming names, including the person at the top. Sarah and Agent Roberts leaned forward eagerly. Who is it? Dr. Victor Chen, Martinez announced, then noticed Sarah's sudden pallor. Wait, any relation? Sarah slumped in her chair, her face a mask of shock. He's my uncle, the one who inspired me to study computer science in the first place. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Dr. Victor Chen was a renowned computer scientist who had pioneered several traffic management systems used across the country. He was also Sarah's mother's brother and had been her mentor throughout college. That's why the code looked familiar. Sarah whispered, pulling up the core programming. I learned this style from him. He taught me everything I know about traffic flow optimization. Agent Roberts placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. This doesn't change anything about what you've accomplished. In fact, it makes it more impressive. You exposed this scheme despite your personal connection. Sarah nodded slowly, then straightened up. And I think I know where to find him. Her fingers flew across the keyboard once again. Every programmer has habits, patterns they fall into without realizing it. Uncle Victor taught me to look for those patterns when debugging code. She pulled up a map showing traffic patterns across several states. Look at these modifications. They're not random. They're following a specific sequence. A sequence based on the Fibonacci numbers, Uncle Victor's favorite mathematical pattern. Martinez leaned closer. Can you predict where he'll strike next? Better than that, Sarah replied, her confidence returning. I can tell you where he is right now. She zoomed in on a location just outside the city. There's an old tech campus he used to work at. It's been abandoned for years, but look at the power usage data I just pulled up. The graphs showed significant electricity consumption from a supposedly empty building. He's there, running his operations from the old server room. It's the perfect setup, isolated, already wired for high-speed internet, and completely off everyone's radar. Agent Roberts was already on her phone, mobilizing teams. Are you sure about this, Sarah? We only get one shot at catching him. Sarah stared at the pattern analysis on her screen, thinking about all the times her uncle had challenged her to solve complex puzzles, to think beyond the obvious. He had taught her to see the patterns hidden in chaos, and now she was using those same lessons to catch him. I'm sure, she said firmly, but there's one more thing. She turned to face Agent Roberts. I want to go with you when you arrest him. He needs to see that it was me who figured it out. He needs to know that his student finally surpassed the teacher. Agent Roberts studied Sarah for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but you stay with the surveillance team. No direct involvement in the arrest. Sarah agreed, already gathering her equipment. As they prepared to move out, she couldn't help but feel a mix of sadness and determination. Her uncle had taught her to seek the truth in code, and that's exactly what she had done, even if it meant exposing him in the process. The old tech campus loomed before them in the pre-dawn darkness, its abandoned buildings casting long shadows across the empty parking lot. Sarah sat in the FBI surveillance van, monitoring network activity while tactical teams took their positions around the main building. I'm detecting active servers in the basement, Sarah reported, her eyes fixed on her laptop screen. Heavy data traffic. He's definitely here, and he's busy. Agent Roberts checked her tactical gear. What's he doing? He's trying to export all his data. Sarah's fingers raced across the keyboard. He must have detected our investigation. He's attempting to wipe his servers and transfer everything to offshore locations. Suddenly, Sarah's screen lit up with a new message. Her breath caught in her throat as she read it. Hello, little niece. Still using the same coding patterns I taught you? He knows we're here, Sarah announced, her voice tight. He's watching us right now. Another message appeared. Did you really think I wouldn't recognize my own students' work? You've grown impressive, Sarah, but you're still predictable. Agent Roberts immediately got on her radio. All units, suspect is aware of our presence. Move in now. But Sarah held up her hand. Wait, look at this. She pointed to her screen, where building schematics had appeared. He's activated some kind of lockdown system. All the doors and windows are sealed with electronic locks. He's trapped himself inside, but he's also keeping us out. The FBI teams confirmed this, reporting that every entrance was suddenly secured by heavy magnetic locks. Sarah's uncle had turned the building into a fortress with the push of a button. Sarah, a new message appeared. Let's play one last game. Just like old times. Below the message, a complex mathematical puzzle appeared on screen. Sarah recognized it immediately. It was a modified version of the first coding challenge her uncle had ever given her, the one that had sparked her love for programming. He's giving me a chance to disable the locks, Sarah explained, already starting to work on the puzzle. This is how he always taught me, through challenges and games. As she worked, more messages appeared. You've done well, exposing my operation. I didn't expect anyone to notice the traffic pattern manipulations. But then again, you always were my best student. The student becomes the master, isn't that how the saying goes? Sarah ignored the messages, focusing entirely on the puzzle. It was fiendishly complex, combining traffic flow algorithms with encryption keys. One wrong move would trigger a complete data wipe. Got it, she exclaimed after several tense minutes. The building's locks disengaged with a series of loud clicks. FBI teams immediately stormed the building, but Sarah kept working. He's still trying to delete evidence. I need to stop him before. She stopped mid-sentence as a new window popped up on her screen. It was a video feed from the basement server room. Dr. Victor Chen sat calmly at a desk surrounded by humming servers, looking directly into the camera. Well done, Sarah, he said, his voice coming through clear and resigned. You've exceeded all my expectations. Sarah grabbed a radio headset. Uncle Victor, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. It's over. He smiled sadly. It was over the moment you walked into that traffic court. I taught you too well, it seems. But tell me, did you enjoy solving the puzzle? Did you feel that rush of satisfaction when all the pieces fell into place? Sarah felt tears welling up in her eyes. Yes, she whispered. I always do. That's what you taught me to love about programming, finding the truth hidden in the chaos. Then I succeeded as a teacher, even if I failed as a human being. He raised his hands as FBI agents burst into the server room. One last lesson, Sarah. Success means nothing without integrity. Remember that. Sarah watched through blurry eyes as her uncle was led away in handcuffs. Agent Roberts squeezed her shoulder supportively. You did the right thing, the agent said softly. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. I know. He taught me that too, even if he forgot it himself. As the sun began to rise over the tech campus, Sarah started documenting all the evidence from her uncle's servers. The traffic light scandal had been solved, but its impact would ripple through the city for months to come. And for Sarah, it marked the end of one chapter in her life and the beginning of another. One where she would use her skills not just to solve puzzles, but to protect others from those who would abuse technology for their own gain. 6 months later, Sarah Chen stood before a packed courthouse, very different from the traffic court where her journey had begun. Gone were her oversized glasses and nervous demeanor. Instead, she stood confidently at the witness stand, explaining complex technical evidence to the jury in clear, simple terms. And so, she concluded, pointing to a simplified diagram, Dr. Chen's organization manipulated traffic patterns across 3 states, affecting millions of drivers and generating over $50 million in fraudulent revenue. The prosecution had saved her testimony for last, knowing she could best explain the technical aspects of the case to the jury. In the audience, Agent Roberts watched proudly as the young woman she'd come to respect handled cross-examination with remarkable poise. "Ms. Chen," the defense attorney asked, "isn't it true that the defendant is your uncle? How can we trust your testimony isn't biased against him?" Sarah met her uncle's eyes across the courtroom before responding. "Yes, he's my uncle. He taught me everything I know about programming. That's exactly how I recognized his methods and caught him. The evidence speaks for itself. I just helped decode it." After her testimony, the jury took only 3 hours to return their verdict. Dr. Victor Chen and his associates were found guilty on all counts. Before being led away, he asked to speak to his niece one last time. "I'm proud of you, Sarah," he said softly, standing under guard. "You become everything I hoped you would be, and more importantly, everything I should have been." Sarah nodded, fighting back tears. "I'll visit you, Uncle Victor. Maybe we can still solve puzzles together, just legal ones this time." The case's resolution brought massive changes to the city. The new mayor appointed Sarah to head a task force on technological transparency in public infrastructure. She worked with the FBI to develop better detection systems for traffic manipulation schemes, and her story inspired a new generation of young programmers to use their skills for public good. 1 year to the day after her original traffic court appearance, Sarah returned to courtroom 302. Judge Harrison, still presiding over traffic cases, broke into a wide smile when he saw her. "Ms. Chen, what brings you back to my humble courtroom?" Sarah pulled out her laptop, the same one she brought that first day. "I thought you might like to see this, Your Honor." She connected to the courtroom display, showing a new traffic management system she'd developed. "After everything that happened, I realized we needed a better way to monitor traffic systems. This program is open source, completely transparent, and available to the public. Anyone can check if their local traffic lights are operating fairly." Judge Harrison shook his head in amazement. From a nervous defendant to a national expert on traffic system security. "Quite a journey, Ms. Chen." "Actually," Sarah smiled, "I have you to thank, Your Honor. If you hadn't been so condescending that first day, I might not have been determined enough to prove myself." The judge laughed heartily. "Well, I certainly learned my lesson about judging books by their covers, or programmers by their sweaters." As Sarah packed up her laptop, a young woman in the defendant's section caught her eye. She was clutching a tablet, looking nervous as she waited to contest her own traffic ticket. Sarah approached her with a smile. "You know, I was sitting right there a year ago. Want some advice?" The woman nodded eagerly, and Sarah spent a few minutes helping her organize her evidence. As she finally left the courthouse, Sarah felt a sense of completion. Her uncle had taught her to solve puzzles, but life had taught her an even more important lesson. Sometimes the biggest challenges aren't in the code, but in having the courage to stand up for what's right. Outside, the traffic lights at Main and 5th, now operating fairly, turned green. Sarah drove through the intersection, smiling at the memory of how a simple traffic ticket had changed her life. Her phone buzzed with a new message from Agent Roberts about another potential case needing her expertise. Some might have called it ironic that she'd become famous for catching her own mentor, but Sarah knew it was just the natural progression of what he taught her. Follow the evidence, solve the puzzle, and always seek the truth, no matter where it leads. The nervous girl from that first court appearance was gone forever, replaced by someone who had learned to combine technical brilliance with moral courage. And somewhere in a federal prison, Dr. Victor Chen smiled, knowing his greatest student had finally surpassed her teacher in all the ways that truly mattered.